Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. It's 2 p.m. local time, so we are going to get started in a few minutes. While we do wait for everyone to log on, we want to learn a little bit more about you, our audience. So please let us know via the chat box where in the world you're joining from and maybe where in the United States you hope to do your internship. If you're not sure where, maybe what field you're hoping to find an internship in. I can go ahead and start. My name is Abigail Grazel. I am the Participant Services Coordinator here in the Career Training USA department at InterExchange. I am joining you from Portland, Maine, and I'm not going to do an internship anytime soon, but I have worked in different places, including New York City, with Taman, who is here presenting with me as well. So I'll let Taman introduce himself.
Hi everyone, my name is Taman Nicholson. I am the program manager for the Career Training USA program. I am based in New York City.
Great. And it looks like we're getting a few responses here. So we do have Amy joining us. She's a fashion design student in London and she plans to intern in New York. Hamza in Morocco wants to intern in Michigan or California. And it looks like we have a few others coming in. Let's see, we have Steven. He's from the Netherlands, and he is an engineering major looking for an internship in Massachusetts. And looks like we have one more, another one coming in. Diego is a marketing major in Chile, and he would like to intern in New York City. And it looks like we also have another Chilean here joining us who wants to do a hospitality internship. All right, so hopefully everyone's on the line. If you want to send in more responses, go for it while we're kind of introducing everything now. Just a quick note that due to the size of the audience, everyone is muted, but you can use your chat feature to ask any questions that you might have throughout the presentation. Additionally, the session is being recorded, and everyone who registered will get a copy of this session. So if something is too fast or you miss something, don't worry, you'll be able to re-review this later on. So for those of you unfamiliar with InterExchange, we are a cultural exchange organization based in New York City. Our mission is to enable global experiences by assisting students and young professionals from overseas to partake in cultural exchange programs in the US, and also to help US students and young professionals experience programs in other countries. Within InterExchange, the Career Training USA programs works with those seeking to undertake internships and traineeships in the US specifically. For that reason, today we are going to discuss networking and developing a mentor-mentee relationship, as we routinely hear anecdotes from participants who tell us how vital these relationships are for finding an international internship. Understandably, international travel and related experiences have been inhibited by the pandemic, but we do know that there is a great demand for international programs still. So when it's safe to resume travel again, we know everyone wants to start coming to the US and just doing those international experiences. Many prospective interns are using this time to develop their network and identify people who might be excellent resources for future career opportunities. So we wanted to provide some tips and guidance for developing some of those contacts. I think this is maybe our 6th or 7th career guidance webinar in a series of 10 that will take place every Tuesday at this time. So over the next couple of months or so, we'll be discussing a range of relevant topics from interviewing to US workplace culture to developing a professional online presence. So if you haven't already, I would encourage you to take a look at the remaining schedule and sign up for any other sessions that might interest you. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Taman to start our presentation.
Awesome, thanks so much, Abby. And so we'll just get started with a general outline of today's session. We're going to begin this presentation by defining networking, why it's an important aspect of your internship search process. Then we'll talk about how to successfully network both in person and virtually. We'll go into specific information on remote networking and also informational interviews. And then we'll shift into mentors and the attributes of a mentor and a mentor-mentee relationship, what they are not, why they're important. We'll then go into some specific tips on how to find a mentor. We'll talk about key components of that process, how mentoring and networking both fit in together, and then we'll highlight some other specific tips that you can use to find a mentor, how to make the most of that relationship, and any other miscellaneous advice that we have that could prove useful depending on your situation or your industry. We'll wrap up with a quick slide on what not to do about finding a mentor, and then we'll do some questions and answers at the end. But as Abby said, please use the chat feature and reach out if you have any questions at any point during the presentation. We have some built-in pauses where we will stop and answer any questions that have come in. Okay, so let's dive right in. What is networking? Networking is professional networking is forming relationships with other people in your field or forming relationships with people who are doing similar things to you. It's the process of connecting and building any relationship you've formed that is going to help you maintain professional contacts. The contacts in your network help you to learn about new opportunities, how to advance your career path, or even find a new career path. Networking also gives you the opportunity to build your own brand. As you start to meet people and you expand your network and other people are meeting you and learning about what interests you, what skills you have, what abilities you have, they start folding you into their contacts and remembering your brand. And that's important, that networking is reciprocal and it's an exchange with others. So you want to learn about them, you want them to learn about you. You're not simply accumulating people so that you can find an internship. You should focus on what you could provide to any new contacts you have, what you might bring to the table, and how you can help new people in your network. It is a two-way street, so don't just focus on what can I get from this new person and what do I need to tell them about myself. My guess is that many of you on this call, you can already see why networking is important, but I do want to highlight some of the advantages and the importance of developing your network before we go too deep into this presentation. First, networking increases your exposure and it builds your personal brand. Like I said before, it lets people know the passions that you have, what you contribute to, and what you could contribute to an organization. Increased exposure makes it more likely that you'll gain professional development opportunities, whether it's a fellowship or a scholarship or an apprenticeship. You'll be more likely to be referred for these opportunities, to be considered for leadership positions. Basically, the more exposure you have, the more people see of an opportunity and think specifically of you, or they think, wow, I know someone who has the skills that would be useful for this fellowship or this scholarship and would do great in this position. Networking also helps you to gain firsthand industry advice. Your network is going to be able to share advice and experiences that you won't necessarily learn from a job description or from a book or from a blog. They can give you advice on how to get your foot in the door after you graduate at any specific company or within a specific industry. And networking is crucial to gain access to all of the internship positions that are on the hidden market. A study from Deloitte in 2018 revealed that 80% of jobs are actually found via networking. So there's a lot more opportunities out there that might not just be posted on organizations' website. Networking also gives you people to turn to for advice. So some of why networking is important, I think many people have heard the cliche, but as you develop your career, you'll find that it's not necessarily what you know, it's who you know. And the more people you know, the more resources you have when you're looking for an internship, when you're seeking advice, when you're seeking letters of recommendation, or just information about other career paths. I want to provide some specific resources about how and where you can start to build your network. I think the good news for everyone on this call is that you already have a network. Your family, your friends, your coworkers, your schoolmates, all of these people are contacts that you already have who know you well and they can vouch for you, and they are part of your personal network already. Another specific place that you can build ways and build your network is your university. Your professors are important liaisons who can introduce you to many opportunities, many people, potential career paths. So make sure that while you're in school, you are connecting with anyone you can who can be part of your network, whether it's visiting researchers who might be on campus from time to time, or other guest lecturers. We've had numerous students tell us that they found their internships through a connection from a visiting professor from the United States. Your Career Center is also another great way to start building your network. They can help you by keeping you informed of various events on campus, like career and employer fairs where businesses might come and might be seeking to interview and meet potential internship candidates. Therefore, you can be proactive and you can reach out and do some research in advance before these events even happen, and be prepared to ask the great questions that make you stand out and make an employer remember you and want to engage with you further. There's also plenty of other university resources as well, whether it's different societies, leadership organizations, member interest groups. These are all excellent ways to build your network while you're on campus. Another area where you can build your network that I wanted to specifically highlight here is conferences. Attending sessions and asking insightful questions is a great way of getting noticed by potential host employers. Conferences also have built-in social time to make sure that people do meet and get the chance to exchange information and ideas. So attending these networking events, if there's an opening reception or coffee breaks or happy hours, these are almost as important as the conference itself. And outside of those formal networking events, you should also visit the exhibition hall and get to meet the exhibitors and learn a little bit more about who they are and what they do and how that might fit into your career interests, assuming that they're not engaged with customers at the time. Some conferences also have career centers themselves where you can schedule time to drop in and have your resume reviewed and get some feedback and tips for breaking into the field. You can also network at your current job too, and I think this is an area that a lot of people overlook. This type of networking is done by simply learning more about your coworkers and learning more about departments that you might not interact with on a day-to-day basis, or learning more about the clients that your company serves, some of your contractors, some of your vendors. Who are these people? What do they do? How do they get to their position? Even friendly competitors can be a great source of networking if you're in a field where there is a lot of collaboration between organizations. And the last area I want to just focus on this slide before we move on is to remember about online networking. This is crucial in 2021. Online engagement is going to help you to grow your network even if you can't physically interact with someone. You might develop a serious connection with someone from another part of the world that you're not currently able to meet due to geographic distance or travel restrictions, but this doesn't have to impede on your ability to collaborate with this person, to let them know a little bit more about yourself and to grow your network. So all of these areas are wonderful places to start. If you're unsure about where you can begin to grow your network, look at any of these 5 categories and some of the subsets within each of them. And I going right off of that, I wanted to focus on how some participants have found internships since the pandemic. These are 5 great examples of 5 different interns who started their internship search during the pandemic and the different ways that they were able to find international interns. So someone who researched all of the Michelin restaurants in San Francisco and reached out to chefs about informational interviews. Another student who made use of the list that their college provides where all previous students have interned, and that was able to guide them in their search for an internship. Someone who has a family friend who is in the finance industry in California and was able to get their CV in front of the right person. Using those networks, those personal networks. Someone who followed the social media posts, and as soon as that internship was posted, they applied right away. And another, like I said, professors and universities are great resources. Someone used their professor as a conduit, who the professor recommended them to attend a virtual conference, and at that virtual conference, they met this company and were able to organize an in-person internship. So what happens if you have exhausted your closest network and still aren't any closer to an internship in the United States? We're going to play this short video about looking past your closest network and some tips on what to do next.
You're going to have to press beyond your strong ties, people like your family and closest friends, and try tapping into your weaker ties. Weak ties are a broader network, your friends of friends of friends. They're important because they have access to resources that your strong ties don't have. This works in both directions, by the way. You have access to resources that they don't have. Let's say most people speak to 3 close friends on a regular basis. Each time you reach beyond the next degree of contacts, you have access to 3 more people, like a tree that branches out 3 times per node. so you can look beyond your closest circles.
I like the tree exercise in this video a lot. I think it's a great illustration of what to do if your immediate network doesn't have the connections to your dream internship. Second and third connections are something you see on LinkedIn all the time. And that's basically the diagram that she was drawing is what a LinkedIn algorithm might look like with all of the nodes of how people are connected. So you might need to ask your closest network to make that introduction to someone who is not within your network, and maybe they're 2 or 3 links apart. And this video from TEDx has a lot more advice on networking, but I thought that section was particularly pertinent to what we were just discussing now. Okay, so we've talked about how and where to go about networking, but let's focus on some actionable tips. These are 7 tips that I think are solid advice for anyone looking to become a stronger networker. The first tip is to evaluate your goal of networking. Is it long-term? Is it to find a specific internship position this summer? Is it a very short-term goal that you have? Make sure that you define your objective before you go about investing time and energy into specific networking objectives. You want to make the best use of your time and also your network's time. Like we saw in the previous video, the second step is to then map out your stronger and weaker connections once you have that objective defined. Who do you know that can introduce you, or who is a connection in the field or the environment where you want to build connections? From there, the third step is to hone in on those specific people who you want to talk to, who can help you to achieve those objectives and help you in your identified growth areas. The fourth step is to practice your elevator pitch. So short statement about who you are, what excites you, what you hope to do in the future. Think about what your elevator pitch might be in a networking situation. I wouldn't say that you need to rehearse it, but you should have a way to easily tick off the important things that you want someone to remember about you. The next step is arguably the most difficult part, and that's approaching contacts. This is going to look a bit different at a conference than if you're requesting an informational interview. Either way, you have to put yourself out there to grow your network. People aren't going to necessarily gravitate towards you. Number 6, be prepared to listen and learn from others. Like I said earlier, networking is an exchange. Everyone thinks that they are interesting and they have the most wonderful insight to share. But the more you learn and the more you listen, the more you learn about others, the more they're going to have the opportunity to share that insight, and they'll think of you favorably because you let them talk about themselves a little bit, and you can start to grow your network there as people realize, oh, this is a person who's generous with their time, and they're eager to learn, and they're eager to listen to the feedback that I have. Number 7 is probably the easiest of all these steps, but I think too many people overlook it. Follow up. Make sure that you're staying in touch with anyone that you've met. Send a note, send an email, connect with them on LinkedIn. Remind the person of the great conversation that you had and any follow-up items that you promised or you want to share. Maybe it's your resume and your cover letter, or maybe it's a link to something pertinent that you discussed that you want them to see. Make sure that after you have that conversation, you do follow up on it. Like I said, I want to address the obvious, which is the change to networking that has been brought about by the pandemic. With the arrival of COVID-19, happy hours, in-person conferences, workshops, many chance meetings are less common. Networking options have moved online partially or maybe entirely online, which can make establishing a personal connection a little bit more difficult. So how do you go about remote networking? I think the first piece of advice that I would recommend is to check in with all of your contacts virtually. We've all done Zoom calls with friends or family, and there's no reason that you can't keep up with your professional network via email, via LinkedIn, maybe a video call just to see how they're doing, or just to catch up and learn a little bit more about what they're up to professionally these days. Similarly, step up your social media presence so that people know what you're up to. Share the professional information, articles, papers of interest that you've come across over the last months, maybe even years. Comment on what others are doing, and as always, stay professional, but make sure that your network doesn't fade away just because they can't physically see you and learn what you're up to. As always, balance the quantity of posts with the quality of posts, but it's something you should definitely make sure that you're maintaining that presence if you can't physically see people. Also, attending virtual conferences is another great piece of remote networking advice. I think networking is pretty awkward sometimes at these conferences, but it's certainly better than nothing. Many of these conferences have free or reduced pricing for registration because it's not the same as an in-person conference. And if you're not comfortable with the online forums or the online format that is built in to these networking receptions that the conferences have added, you could still attend and follow up with the presenters at the conference afterwards to thank them for their presentation or ask any questions that maybe you didn't want to ask in the virtual format. Similarly, see if your Career Center has shifted online over the last year. Are there webinars that they are running, like this one, where alumni may share how they've broken into the field or how people can craft useful cover letters? Are there virtual networking events for alumni? Is there a database of contacts they put together so they can help students during this time? And I think the last 2 points are relevant in general for networking, but more so when it comes to a remote setting. First, reach out before you need something. No one wants to only hear from a contact when they're looking for a new job or for a letter of recommendation. Find reasons and find ways to connect outside of just the times when you need help. And second, remember that networking is an action, not a location. So you can network from anywhere in the world, including right at home. I want to pause for questions before we move into informational interviews, because there's a lot that we covered about some of the basics of networking, and I don't want to move too far away from that. So Abby, do we have any questions that have come in so far?
Let me see what it looks like. We did have a couple of questions. All right, I'm just trying to choose the best one here. So what's the best way, to engage with or to meet someone virtually?
So I think the best way to engage with someone virtually is to look at their current virtual presence. If they are on LinkedIn and they're posting that they're going to a networking conference online, maybe attend that conference or comment on the things that they're commenting on LinkedIn. I think that's a great equalizer where everyone has access and you can see what people are up to professionally and start that conversation there if you don't have a prior relationship with the person.
Perfect, thank you. That was the only question that's come in so far.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, let's play this video about informational interviews, and we'll talk a little bit more about informational interviews.
Informational interviews are a great networking tool that allow you to find out more about a career field, to increase your professional contacts, and to help you prepare for the job search. An informational interview is an arranged meeting with someone who works in a job, career field, or organization that interests you. It's usually 30 minutes or less and can be via phone, video, or in person. You can find potential professionals to interview through your existing network, such as friends, family, or classmates. Or you can also explore sources such as LinkedIn, ICC events, faculty and staff, or clubs and associations. It may be easier than you think to find someone to interview because the professional you are talking to also gets a lot out of the conversation. People generally enjoy talking about their experience and connecting with others that have the same interests. The key to a successful interview is to have sincere curiosity about the person or organization. This will lead to an authentic and engaged conversation.
I wanted to add in this video from the University of California, Davis's International Internship and Career Center. I think it does an excellent job in explaining the purpose and the structure of an informational interview. To follow up on that video, I wanted to add some of our own tips on how to have a successful informational interview. The first is to remember that the goal of an informational interview is not to get hired, but instead your objective is to grow your network. It's to gain knowledge about your dream position, maybe even get an early in at the company. Informational interviews are simply a conversation to learn more and get the inside scoop on what it's like to work in your area of interest. And as you saw in the video, there are many ways to initiate an informational interview. First, you'll need to demonstrate a bit of proactivity. You can ask your existing network connections to introduce you to any key professionals, but you need to identify who those professionals are, who it is you want to speak with, the type of person you want to speak with, and also why. Be specific in your request. Tell the person you want to speak with them because you have specific goals and objectives. Maybe you want to search for an internship in New York City in the finance industry, and you can ask your contacts to introduce you to someone who maybe has done that before, and that way you can ask them about what it was like to search for an internship and to train in a finance firm. That's a lot more specific of a request than just saying, oh, can you introduce me to your contacts? I want to pick their brain, as many people often say. Be specific. You want to know more about the internship search process, more about what it's like to work in that industry. Also prepare the same way for an informational interview as you would for a typical job interview. Make a good first impression, exude competency, show eagerness, any other important character traits that you want to showcase. Dress professionally the same way you would for an interview. Make sure that you're prepared. Don't ask the person you're meeting with basic information that can easily be found on their biography or on their LinkedIn profile. Show that you've put effort into researching them. And if you're afraid you might not remember all of the key questions, it's definitely okay to write them down. You're the one who requested this conversation. That means you're the one who should show up with those questions, and you should be the one who's driving the direction of the conversation. And while job offers certainly do come out of informational interviews, I think we saw that in the example of the culinary intern in San Francisco right now. Will you hire me is never a good question for an informational interview. You want to know more about their company, but you're not just saying, I'd like to work for your company. Maybe in the future, sure, but you're not asking for a position. And if you're going out for coffee or lunch or something like that, you should certainly offer to buy. They're giving you their time, so that's a nice gesture of compensation for helping you out, for sure. And like a traditional interview, send a thank you note afterwards, thanking them for their time. You're building your network, so make sure that you're keeping in touch with that person moving forward, and you make a great lasting impression on them. I want to pause here again for any questions, but while we wait for any questions that may have come in about informational interviews, I wanted to read off some suggested questions that you might want to ask in an informal interview if you're thinking right now that you're not sure what you could possibly ask, or you don't know what you don't know. Some great questions are, what is a typical day like for you? What are your main responsibilities in your position? How did you begin your career? What steps would you recommend that I take to better prepare to enter the field? What do you like most about your position? What do you like least about your position? How does your job affect your general lifestyle? Is it a job where you're working 60 hours a week? Is it a job where you're required to travel a lot? Are you able to balance work life? What are some common career paths in this field? What maybe would you do after you had an internship? Or what would you do after 5 years? And another wonderful question to ask when you're finishing up an interview is, can you suggest anyone else that might have some additional information that you could contact and you could also ask about? I think that's a wonderful way to step from one contact to future contacts and meet as many people as you can in the field using informational interviews. Before we move on.
Oh, sorry. We have had some more questions come in. So the first one is someone wants to know if they can ask for multiple informational interviews.
Yes, so I assume they mean multiple people or on the same person multiple times. But yeah, if you have an informational interview with someone and you think there's more information that you would like to ask, I think you can certainly have a second informational interview with that person. Again, be cognizant of their time. If they have the time to sit down with you and give you a second informational interview, make sure that it is different than the first, and there is additional questions that you would ask. I would do your best to ask the most important information during that first informational interview, but if it's warranted, I think you could certainly ask them for a second one, assuming that they have the time to offer you.
Yeah, we also have a kind of a later question from earlier in the presentation that came in a bit late, but they wanted to know how they can network without their current employer knowing they're looking for a new position.
So networking is not something that you'd always do if you're looking for a new position. I think that what you want to keep in mind is when you are networking, it's to meet people, and it's to make sure that they know who you are and you know who they are, but it's not something you would only do when you're looking for a new position. So keep your networking more open, not so specific in your networking to find a new job. You're networking to meet people, and if you're networking just to meet people, I don't think that your employer would think that you're looking for a new job. But if you're reaching out to people and saying, I'd like to meet with you because I'm looking for a new job, then you want to be cautious about how you're approaching that conversation and who you're reaching out to, who might be able to, or who might know your employer, and word might get back. So when you are networking, keep it broad, and I don't think that there's any issue about your current employer knowing that you're looking for a new position.
Great, and we just have one final question that I'll ask right now. Someone says they've emailed a lot of people to ask for informational interviews, but only a few have responded. Is there a way that they can try to get more people to reply so that they can maybe help them find an internship?
I would look at the email that you're sending to people about informational interviews and see if you could have a friend or a professor take a look, and maybe they might have advice for how to craft that email so more people will respond. We sometimes get similar messages from prospective interns who tell us that they've emailed every employer on our database and only a few have responded. And that's not always the best approach, because we have architecture employers, we have fashion design employers, we have engineer employers on our database. So you don't want to email everyone. You want to email the more specific contacts who are going to be able to provide the more specific advice. So if your email that you have, if you're sending it to many people, it might be too general, and some contacts might not be responding because they can see that it's a form email. And if that's not the case, then it could just be that they don't have the time and capacity to give you an informal interview, which is okay. But I think the bigger key is making sure that introduction that you're providing is specific, and it's specific to them, so they can see why you're reaching out to that person in particular, instead of just maybe everyone in their field or in their company. So if those are the only questions we have, I'm going to move into mentorship and what is a mentor. We can chat a little bit about who can be a mentor and what is a mentor. So a mentor is a guide, a coach, an advisor, a cheerleader, navigator, role model, all rolled into one. There's someone to help you maneuver around challenging situations that you might encounter and provide resources to help better your career advancement and learn new skills. A mentor will help you to find pathways to accumulate important skills and experience, and to point you in the right direction to advance yourself professionally. Usually a mentor is someone in the same industry as you, likely one level or multiple levels ahead of you, but we'll talk a little bit more about the variances in the next slide. Mentors help shape mentees' ambitions and mentees' career plans. Mentors are typically qualified to serve in this capacity because they have the general expertise and the professional knowledge that is relevant to the mentee and the skills that the mentee is looking to gain. It's not necessary that mentors need to work for the same company as the person they're mentoring, just that they have that related insight that will be helpful in developing their career path. On the flip side, let's talk about who is not a mentor. And I think first, your boss by design is not a mentor, and that's because they were hired by your company to help them. And you'll certainly learn a lot from your boss, and they will, in many situations, turn out to be a great role model, or some of the other descriptors I mentioned on the last slide. They may even become a mentor down the line, but remember, that's not their primary function at the moment. I know of a lot of people who have had a former boss turn into a mentor after they stopped directly reporting to that person, and they could be a little bit more open about work challenges, potential new opportunities in ways that they couldn't do when that person was their direct boss. That being said, you can certainly have a mentor within your organization, but again, just be smart about the challenges and frustrations that you express to someone who is someone who's in the same workplace as you. Your mentor is also not your therapist. You want to be really clear about separating the professional and the personal items that you want to discuss. Your mentor is someone to help you grow professionally, but they're not there for you to unload all of your personal frustrations. Every mentor-mentee relationship is different, but keep in mind the goals of the mentorship you're seeking and remain focused to those goals. Also keep in mind that a mentor is different from a sponsor. I should note that I'm not talking about a visa sponsor like InterExchange. I'm talking about sponsorship. I mean a workplace sponsor. A mentor answers questions and offers advice, while a sponsor is typically an executive who uses his or her connections to advocate for a younger or less experienced protege in the organization and actively participate in their career growth. Your mentor isn't necessarily going to be able to advocate for you within your organization, especially if they don't work with you. And lastly, a mentor isn't just one person. You can have multiple mentors, and maybe one to help you with particular hard skills, another to help provide advice on communication and management techniques, maybe a third that can share advice for navigating a difficult corporate environment. The whole presentation will talk about mentor in a singular form, but it's crucial to note now that you can and should have multiple mentors to turn to for guidance. So how can a mentor help you? First, a mentor can provide you with advice. This may be general career advice, or in a prolonged setting, they can help you to work on hard skills needed for professional development. Again, something we talked about a few weeks ago in the skill sessions and all the different ways that you could develop your skills. But there are also soft skills that a mentor can help with, and it's crucial for professional development as a mentee develops as an employee and becomes a future leader to gain those soft skills that a mentor can help provide and guide them into accumulating. A mentor can help you take stock in the skills that you currently have and what it is that you need to hone a little bit more. And they can give you honest feedback about your strengths and areas needed for improvement while identifying opportunities and resources to help you build those key skills. Mentors can also help you with career advancement. They can help you as you're seeking and applying for new positions. They can provide you with feedback and advice on your cover letter, your interview style, maybe in the ways that you're seeking informational interviews, like in the question we had a few slides ago. Mentors can provide support during your hiring process by practicing interview questions with you, helping you to develop your elevator pitch, even uncomfortable subjects like negotiating salary. They can also help you when you're seeking to advance your career by suggesting some stepping stone positions, ideas for maximizing your presence within your organization, even certifications that you maybe want to consider seeking out that will help you to advance your career in the long run. Mentors can help you find a place in your industry by introducing you to relevant interest groups, networking meetings, key contacts, listservs, training opportunities, and any other people or opportunities to help you expand your network and expand your brand. Your mentor can make those connections to those people if they already know the field and they understand who some of the key players are. And lastly, your mentor is a reliable source of a letter of recommendation, and this can be extremely valuable depending on who your mentor is and how well they know the field and how respected they might be among peers and colleagues. So before we go into how to find a mentor, I want to discuss some key points for successful mentees. And you can use this as a general outline as you begin to seek mentors. So the first step is to define your goals, similar to when we were talking about networking. Why do you want a mentor? Next, once you've defined those goals and you've set an objective, evaluate your network. Who do you know who can help you? Who can introduce you to someone who can maybe help you? Third, make that clear ask. What and why do you want this person to help you? What do you want them to help you with? It's okay to have multiple mentors helping you on multiple things. Like we talked about, you don't want to pit them against each other necessarily, but it's okay to have a few people helping you with various skills. Also be eager and be proactive. Try to build skills in between your meetings with your mentor. Schedule agenda items and things you want to follow up on. Stay open to feedback and put in place any suggestions and feedback that your mentor has for you. I think you should also remember to stay humble. At any age, at any position, someone can have a mentor who can help them to learn new skills they don't have and accumulate some more knowledge and abilities that will help them to be a more successful and professional person. So I think it's important to remember that anyone can provide guidance in or out of your organization, whether they're above you or in a lateral position. There's many different ways that you can have a mentor. And we're going to talk on the next slides about those specific 4 steps on how to find a mentor. I did again want to just pause one more time before we go through those to see if there's any questions about mentors so far.
We actually did have one question come in. She wants to know, both her and her friend want to intern in fashion in the US. Would it be okay if they shared a mentor?
I don't see any harm in sharing a mentor. I think that you're both individuals, even if you have the same goal, and the mentor is going to have different advice for both of you. So I wouldn't, well, you might not want to schedule group sessions, but as long as you're both able to meet individually with a mentor, or if you're able to work on different skills depending on where you both are in your careers, I think it's fine if you share a mentor, assuming that person has the capacity to have 2 mentees. But just remember, just because you're both in the same field and you both have the same goal, doesn't mean that the skill sets that you have are going to be exactly the same, and the things you need to work on are going to be exactly the same.
Thanks, Tim. And there aren't any other questions at the moment.
Awesome. Then we will jump into the 4 steps on how to find a mentor. So we'll talk a little bit more concretely about these steps. They're pretty straightforward, but fairly involved, each of them. Finding a mentor is not an overnight process. It's going to take some time, and it's going to take some energy and effort. And the first step is networking. And that's why we spent the first half of the presentation talking about networking, because having a strong network is an important process in the early steps for finding a mentor. And it's going to make your life a lot easier if you have a wide group that you can reach out to and perhaps pick from for mentors. So as you begin to find a mentor, you need to identify what you hope to gain. So who do you want to emulate? Why? What skills do they have? Make your learning desires known to people. What are you currently working on? What projects are you hoping to get into? Where could you use a little bit of help and assistance? From there, that's when you can start to draw it in a little bit. Who in your network has these attributes? Who can help you get to where you want to be? Think critically. Is there an executive in your organization who is many career steps ahead of you? Is there someone who's only a few steps ahead of you, but they're where you hope to be next summer? Would either of these people be a potential mentor? Maybe someone who is doing their internship in the United States right now could be a great source of information, could be a great mentor for you. Mentors are not superhuman, so they're flawed like anyone else. Make sure you have a good understanding of both their strengths and their weaknesses, though the latter might not be totally apparent to you if you don't know them that well, but keep that in mind, that there might be some drawbacks to selecting certain people as your mentors. And you can also explore mentors outside of your current network. I think the internet is a great equalizer for anyone who is connected to people and connected to the internet. Study potential mentors using their blogs and their LinkedIn profiles, their professional writing. Like I was answering earlier about how to engage someone remotely, be active in your comments and your collaboration with them. Learn about their communication style or their interests. Are they more formal? Are they interested in something outside of work that you share somewhere that can help build a bond with that person? Another important consideration is identity-based mentors. And these are people who've maybe gone the same path as you or faced the same obstacles as you due to similar character traits. Maybe someone who has thrived as a minority in their workplace or been able to balance a career and children. That could be someone in your network or outside of your network again, but I think for any of these examples about step one in networking, you want to be careful as you reach out to people outside of your network about any cold asks. You want to have some rapport with a person before you just say, hey, will you be my mentor? You want to make sure that you've been able to build some type of connection with them first so that they know who you are and they have a better understanding of what your needs are. So once you've done your homework a little bit, next is the outreach. You can start to reach out to some of those people that you've identified or maybe you're in touch with. And this is where informational interviews come into play. Initiate your outreach with an informational interview. You don't have to phrase it as such, but you can reach out to that potential mentor and tell them what you'd like to discuss. The tone of your outreach is going to depend on how well you know the person or if you're being introduced by one of your other connections, but either way, you're reaching out to ask them for a bit of their time. So you want to be humble about that request, and it is okay to follow up if you don't hear back or if you don't get a strong commitment, but be careful not to bombard them. Afterwards, evaluate the conversation. How did it go? Was the connection made? Is there more you could learn from that person? How did this person make you feel about yourself, your goals working with them? Were they encouraging? Were they dismissive of you? Do they have the bandwidth to be a mentor? Do you want to see them again? These are all important questions to think about. It's kind of like a first date. It might seem like someone is a good match on paper, but not really in real life. So even if you decide that it's not a good fit and you don't want to see them again and they're not going to be a good mentor, remember to still send them that thank you. Remember to still stay in touch. Remember to still add them to your LinkedIn because you never know how your paths might cross again in the future. And I would encourage repeating this process or simultaneously reaching out to a few people as a way to broaden your network to potential mentors. So it doesn't mean that you just need to follow down that path once and then start again if it doesn't work out. You can have multiple people that you're meeting with simultaneously as you're exploring potential mentors. Step 3 is probably the hardest part. This is when you need to make the ask, will you be my mentor? I wouldn't do this in your first meeting, maybe not even in your second, depending on how your conversations have gone with this person. Again, it all depends on how well you hit it off and how much rapport you have built with this potential mentor. But in your ask, you should be specific. What is it that you want mentoring on? For example, you could say, I admire your facilitation skills and I have a goal to improve my own skills in that area. Would you be willing to be my mentor as I try and build towards this goal? That's a very concrete, specific goal that you're asking them to mentor you on. Also show that you're serious. What steps are you already taking to build your facilitation skills? Have you enrolled in a skill building course? Are you actively seeking opportunities to facilitate more in your current position? Demonstrate that's something that you're already working towards with or without their help, so you're not solely relying on them to impart this additional capacity to you. I think it's also really important to stop here and address that if that person says no, that they don't or cannot be your mentor, that's okay. It doesn't mean you have to write them out of your life. You don't need to be embarrassed. They are still a connection. They could still be a role model. They could still be a colleague. This might not be a good candidate for a mentor. And I think saying no is better than saying yes and then not having the time to invest in mentoring you. So step 4, this is an important last step. Step 3 might be the hardest, but step 4 is the most important. As the person asking for mentorship, you should be the one to take care of the logistics and you should develop the plan. Outline what it is you want to work on, when, how, make agendas for your meetings so that you have something to refer back to and you can keep your learning goals on task. Mentees drive the relationship, so it's important to make the most of the time the mentor is giving you. And demonstrate your commitment to being prepared and asking for specific actionable feedback. Ask for homework or things that you could work on in between meetings with your mentor. Prepare that mentor to challenge you, and also be open to variations in how you might achieve a goal. Maybe your plan is to build leadership skills, and your mentor is going to likely push you and have you put yourself into more practical situations, even if your plan was maybe just to brush up on the theory of leadership skills. So be open to different styles of approaches to build those skills, even if you and your mentor might have different ideas on how that could be achieved. Also, make it easy on your mentor. They're providing extra time in their day to share advice and guidance, so you should be putting in the bulk of the work and the required commitment. To this effect, let the relationship develop organically. For a professional mentor, they might not be interested in sharing much about their personal life, and they might feel more comfortable sticking to the specifics of your skills. And they maybe don't want to be a personal friend, they just want to be a professional colleague. That's okay. Don't try to force the relationship into something it's not or something more. Whatever type of interaction you have with your mentor, though, show that you value their feedback and you're appreciative of their time and their investment that they've made in you. I said at the beginning we would also talk a little bit about how not to find a mentor. So let's look at some of these ways. First and foremost, don't ask a stranger to be your mentor. Like I said a couple slides ago, make yourself not a stranger. Find ways to connect with them like we talked about at the beginning of this presentation. Comment on their blogs, share their updates, see what events and activities they're attending, and other ways that you could maybe introduce yourself at a networking event, or by referring new clients to their business, or setting up an informational interview. The list of ways to connect with them goes on and on. Second, like I just said, don't force a mentorship connection. If they say no, they're not sure, they're probably not going to be a great mentor. You want someone who's going to be all in and someone who you actually connect with. If it doesn't seem like it's a good fit, if you just don't click, or if they don't show interest in the idea, forcing a mentorship is not going to achieve the goals you've set out to achieve. Make sure your mentor is also someone that you genuinely like and you want to be meeting with on a regular basis. Another way to not find a mentor is by connecting with close friends or family. It's just not a great idea. You want someone who's going to be honest with you, almost in a clinical way. You don't want someone who's not going to be truthful or hide what they think you should work on for fear of hurting your feelings or tarnishing the relationship that you have with them. And I think the last way to not find a mentor is just expecting them to find you. Everyone is busy, and few people are going to reach out and say, hey, I see you're struggling and I'd really like to be your mentor. You're going to have to be proactive, and you're looking for someone to take the time and energy and make that investment in mentoring you. So some key takeaways before we do our wrap-up slide and any final questions that have come in. Networking is reciprocal, so remember that. Networking is a two-way street, and think about ways that you can help connect people in your network. There are many different tools for networking: in-person connections, making the most of some of your weaker ties, virtual networking, and also informational interviews to build a stronger relationship with people. You should actively seek out mentors. Think about people who could be your mentor now. Think about people who could be your mentor maybe down the line. Think about people who would be a good mentor if you had a stronger relationship with them. Define what your goals are for mentoring. If you are seeking a mentor, what do you want them to help you with? Not just to make you more successful. Make you more successful how? And once you do find a mentor, show sincerity and make a plan of how you will achieve the goals and how they fit into the goals that you've set forward in making the most of that mentorship that they're able to offer. As we'll open up to any of the questions that have come in, and as we wait for any questions, I do want to just talk about some of the other webinars we have coming up soon. We have 4 more left in our fall series. So next week we're going to talk about interview tips and how to help you land that dream interview, or for those of you who have already interned, the dream internship, and for those of you who've already interned, maybe that dream job. And then we have a session on US workplace culture, followed by another session about English in the US workplace, where we'll talk about all of the idioms that we use, and I tried to keep those to a minimum in this presentation. I think I used some as well. And then we will finish out the series with a panel in November of 3 alumni and 1 current intern who have interned in the States, and will be able to impart their advice. As Abby said earlier, all of our past webinars are also on YouTube as well. And if you do have any questions, our contact information is right here on the slide. We're happy to help you out after this session with any questions that you might have in your internship search or in your J1 visa sponsorship application. So before we log off, Abby, are there any final questions on these topics?
Yeah, we had one final question come in. They want to know if they should, think of questions ahead of time and send them to their potential, the person they're doing an informational interview with. Should they send those questions ahead of time?
I don't see any harm to that. I think if you know the person is going to be busy and you want to make the most of that, you can say, here's some of the questions I was hoping to ask, and then you can go a little bit deeper into some of those responses in person. I think that is totally fine. If you're not exactly sure what those questions are, you could say, yeah, I was hoping to ask you a little bit more about the steps you took to get from university to your job, or what you do in your current position. You can keep it a little bit more topical, I guess, so that there's things you can talk about underneath that topic. But I think that's a great way of, again, showing that proactivity, that you know what it is you're asking for in the informational interview.
Great. Actually, we did just have one final question come in, and the person says, can other family members be mentors? So I know you mentioned no close family, but what about, maybe someone you don't know quite as well, but who's still a part of your family?
Yeah, I think that could work. Every family dynamic is a little bit different, so I don't want to get too into that, but I think that could certainly work if you have someone who is going to be able to mentor you in a truthful way. If there is an aunt or a parent in between you who might, you don't want to create any weird disruptions in your family if the person is too close. But if it is a distant cousin, I think we recently just had a student who we approved who has a distant cousin who is actually serving as their internship supervisor, who they don't know that well, but was able to make connections through family, and I think that's fine. But just be cautious, I guess, of which family members you select as a mentor, and how separate the family is from the professional side of things.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Okay, that was the final question that we had.
Well, thank you, everyone, and we hope to see you on our next webinar next Tuesday. Take care.
Thank you.